What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this second episode of the Flask tutorial series, we're going to cover a bunch of different topics, including routes, URL parameters, URL patterns and processors, dynamic URLs, as well as the different methods that we can use to send a request, and how to return custom status codes. So let us get right into it. Alright, so let us briefly recap what we did up until this point. We created a virtual environment for our application so that we only have the packages that are relevant to this project that we're building here. And we created this simple Hello World application in Flask. The idea is we import from Flask, Flask with a capital F, we create an application, and then we add this index function, which just returns Hello World as a heading. This is just some HTML code here. And then we map this index function to the default route /. And then all we have to do is we have to run the application with the host 0000, which is automatically localhost, and also the private local IP address. Then we also customize the port to be 5555, and we set debug to true, which has the effect of us not having to constantly restart the application to make changes or to apply changes. It happens when we change the code, and we also see the error messages instead of something like internal server error without any context. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to learn about routes. We're going to learn how to handle different types of URLs, so how to handle dynamic URLs, also how to handle URL parameters, and we're going to learn about the different types of requests like post and get and put and so on. And we're going to also learn how to return custom status codes. So let us start with a very simple thing first. Let's just add another endpoint here which has a different route. So we can say here another function, let's say hello, and this function will also return just a simple hello world, maybe not as a heading this time. What we can do easily is we can just say app.route, and the route can be something like /hello. The important thing is every route has to start with a /, so you have to say / and then something, and you can call this route whatever you want. You can call it hello, you can call it hello world, you can call it ABC, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't even have to match the name of the function. So I can call the route XYZ and I can call the function hello. This is also fine. And by doing that, you can basically add as many endpoints as you want. So what you have to do is you have to run the application, and then you can just say /hello, and then you will get to this endpoint that is mapped to the function, or that the function is mapped to. Now, this is all static, so I can add a bunch of those and they're always going to be the same. However, what I can also do is I can add certain or so-called URL processors. So I can have variables in the URL itself that I can handle in the function. So for example, what I can do is I can create an endpoint here, a route, which I can call /greet. And then what I can do is I can add a name here. So I can say I want to greet a certain name, and how I can do that is I can use angle brackets to specify a name here. So now it's not greet and then /angle brackets name. This is not the endpoint, but name is now a variable that can be dynamic. So I can say greet Mike, greet Bob, or something like this. And the way I handle this is I create a function, and the function takes the parameter name. So in this case, what I could do is I could say fstring hello and then name. So the idea is now in the URL itself, I have the parameter name, and I can go to the route greet /Mike, and I would get a different response than when I go to greet /Bob, for example. And we can see that this is the case by just going to /greet /Mike, and there you go. Hello Mike, /greet /Bob, hello Bob. So this is what is called a URL processor. Now, there are certain things that we can add to these URL processors. So for example, if I have a route, let's call it add, so /add, and what I have here is number 1 and number 2. Then what I can do is I can define the function add, which takes the parameters number 1, number 2. But you're going to notice something if I return, for example, an f-string saying number 1 plus number 2 is equal to number 1 plus number 2. What you will notice is that when we go to the application and I actually go to add /10/20, you will see that the result is 1020. And of course, this is because what happens by default is that the parameters that we pass are considered to be strings. So they're just concatenated. So the string 10 plus the string 20 is of course 1020. That's a string concatenation. If I actually want to do a calculation, I have to typecast these parameters. So what I can do, of course, is I can say number1 equals int number1, but I can also just specify the data type of the parameter of the it's not a URL parameter, of the value that is passed here as part of the dynamic URL. I can specify it here in the route already. So I can say it's an int colon number1, and it's an int colon number2. So what happens here now is that this is considered to be an integer already. So I can say at 1020, and you can see 10 plus 20 is 30. What happens now is, though, when I pass something else, so when I say 10 hello, I get not found, because this is now obviously a string. It cannot be typecasted into an integer, and this route is only for integers. So if I pass something that's not an integer, it doesn't even have the route. It doesn't find the mapping. So those are, or this is how you do dynamic URLs. Those are URL processors. What we can also do is we can pass actual URL parameters. And maybe you've seen this, or probably you've seen this on a couple of websites. You go to something like login. Now, hopefully it's not done like this. This is very insecure. But you usually have something like login and then question mark username equals and then something, and then you have an and then you have password equals, and again, hopefully it's not in clear text in the URL. But these are URL parameters if you see them somewhere. So how can we handle those in Flask? What we can do is we can do the following app route, and then maybe let's call this handle. The suggestions you see here are, by the way, from my prepared code. It just thinks that I'm going to write all of the stuff again, and I actually am. So handle query or handle URL params, let's call it that way. Handle URL parameters. And the function is going to be handle params or something like this. Now we don't need to pass anything here now as a parameter. The parameters here are taken from the URL. So if I have these URL processors here, they're going to be part of the function signature. If I handle the actual URL parameters, it's happening by using a so-called or using the request instance. So what I have to do is I have to say from Flask import Flask and also request, and then it's going to be part of the request object. So I can do here, or actually I can return the string version of request.arguments. So I can just return this as a string version, and then I can go to handle what was it? Handle URL params. And you can see it's an empty dictionary. So it's an empty immutable dictionary. But if I add now some parameters, so question mark name is equal to Mike, then you can see I have name and Mike in here. And if I say and greeting is equal to hello, you can see I have name Mike, greeting hello. So what I can do here is I can say that I want to handle the following thing. The greeting is going to be equal to request.args.get, and I can say here greeting, and the name is going to be the same thing with name. By the way, this is a dictionary, so you can also, instead of saying get, you can just do this. This also works. And then we can return, for example, an f string that says greeting and then name. So when I go back, I can just go to / handle URL parameters and then name Mike, greeting hello, hello Mike. So this is how you handle the URL parameters. Now, of course, if one is missing, this is going to give me a bad request key error. So it makes sense to check if we have all the parameters available. We can do something like if greeting in request arguments dot keys and name in request arguments dot keys. Then we do all this. Otherwise, we return some parameters are missing. So now if I do this, I get some parameters are missing. And if I go to this, I get hello Mike. All right. So this is how you handle the URL parameters. Now, if you have a post request, you actually get a form. We're going to talk about this, I think, in the next video. So we're not going to handle the post parameters yet. So we're not going to handle forms that actually include information that we pass with a post request. However, what we are going to do is we're going to learn how to handle different types of requests, because all these routes, all these endpoints that we define here are by default only handling GET requests. So we can see that this is the case by opening up a terminal. I'm not sure if this works out of the box on Windows. It does work on Mac and Linux. You can use the tool curl, and if you don't have curl, just install curl using your package manager. And curl basically just sends a request. So I can say http:// then localhost / hello, for example. And of course, I need to specify the port, which is 5555. And you can see I get hello world here as an answer. So I can just send a simple GET request to an endpoint, and I get whatever this endpoint returns to me. Now, what I can do is I can also specify the method. So I can say curl -x, so capital X, and then post to specify that now I'm sending a post request to the same endpoint. And what you can see here is I get as a response 405 method not allowed. So the post method is not supported by this endpoint. Now, if we want to change this, if we want to allow for post requests, we need to define this in the route definition. So for example, if I want to allow for post requests on the endpoint hello, what I have to do is I have to say methods equals, and then I have to pass a list of all the methods that I want to support on this endpoint. By default, this list looks like this. It's just get. However, I can also say it's just post. If I specify it like that, GET requests are no longer allowed. So I can save this, I can open up my terminal, and I can say curl http://127.001.5555 and then /hello. You will see it now tells me method not allowed, even though I didn't specify post, or exactly because I didn't specify post. Whereas if I say -x post, you will see I get hello world. So if I want to support both, I just have to say get and post. And then I can run the same thing. It works, and I can also run just, now the displaying is a little bit messed up. There you go. I can also do it with get, and I also get the same response. Now, the difference between get, post, put, delete is not really a technical one primarily. It's primarily a convention. You use get when you want to get a resource, when you want to get information. You use post when you want to submit information, so when you want to create something. You use put when you want to update information. So when there is, for example, if you have a to-do list application, you already have an existing to-do, you want to change something about it, you use put. And if you want to delete it, you use delete. So those are the four main methods. There are also others, but we're going to focus on those four. And you can basically just specify that you want to allow for put, you want to allow for delete, and so on. Maybe you only want to allow for delete, but this is how you use them. Get to get information, post to create information or to submit information, put to change information, delete to delete information. Now let's say you support multiple of these methods on the same endpoint. How can you differentiate between the two or between the three or four? Let's say I have get and post here. What I can do is I can say if request.method is equal to get, then I want to have a certain kind of behavior. So then I want to return, for example, here, you made a get request. Then I can say elif request method is equal to post. And then I can just print you made a post request. Now you can also, if you want to, add an else branch, but this is not going to be relevant because the proper message here is you will never see this message. Because of course we cannot send a put request or a delete request or anything else to this endpoint, you will always only get a get or a post request. So I can go again into the terminal. Maybe let's go ahead and also add a \n in the end, just so we have a line break so that we don't have to constantly mess up the formatting in the command line. So I can send this request, you made a GET request, I can send a POST request, you made a POST request. And what you usually do later on, we're going to learn about templating and using HTML files and so on. What you usually do is you have one endpoint that does something, and when you send a GET request to that endpoint, you get the HTML template. So you get basically the form to fill out with maybe create a new to-do. You get when you send a GET request to this create to-do page, you get the form that allows you to create or to specify the new to-do. And then when you click the submit button, you send a POST request to the same endpoint to actually create the to-do. So in the GET branch, you would serve the HTML file, and here you would actually process the information from the form. All right, so this is how you handle the different methods. Now, last but not least, I want to show you how you can return a custom response. So how you can specify the status code that you want to return. And for this, we're going to actually also use the hello here. So let's go back and just return hello world. And let's only allow for get again. What we can do here, this is the simple way to do it. We can just specify the status code by passing or by returning it as a second value here. So I can just say comma 200, and this will return a 200 status code. Now I think 200 is the default. We can see if that is the case by just going again into the terminal, and let's just add again here for formatting reasons a \n. We can go ahead and say curl, but I can also specify here dash, what was it? I wrote it down here. I think it's dash capital I to get the response header. So you get HTTP 200 OK, and then you get also the content type, the content length. You can see it's text HTML, it's a content length of 12 and so on. Now I can change this by just saying comma 201, which is created. So you usually use that after a POST request. I can just curl again, and you can see here now I get 201 created. I can also change this to 202, and then you get accepted. I can also change this, even though it doesn't fit here, I can also change this to 404, which is not found, and you can see I get not found. I can also change this to 500, which is, I think, internal server error. There you go. I can also change this to 501, which is something else, not implemented. And I can also change this to something like 936, which I don't even know what it is. Unknown. There you go. Or I can change this to something like this. I'm not sure if this is going to be rejected. Yeah, unsupported response code and HTTP response. So I have a video on this channel where I explain the different status codes, when to use which one and what they basically mean. I'm not going to go through all this here. Just know 200s are basically to tell you that everything worked fine. 300s are for redirection. 400 is telling you you did something wrong, and 500 is telling you the server messed up something. That's like the most important thing to know. Now we can also go ahead and create a full custom response. So we can go and say from Flask import Flask request and make response, and then we can craft a full response. We can say response is equal to make response. And then we can do things like response.status code is equal to 202, for example. And then we can also say response, and I can actually, or response.headers, and I can actually manipulate things like content type is going to be equal to, and I can change this to application/octet stream, for example, or JSON or text plain or something like this. So I can go now, and you can see we get, actually we don't get this because we were still returning hello world. We need to, of course, return the response. There you go. You can see now 202 accepted, content type application octet stream. And of course now we don't have any text, so we would have to add here hello world \n to have the content. There you go. And we still have content length 12. And if I just do it like this, I still get hello world. We can also change this here to text/plain, which is more fitting, I guess. There you go, text plain, 202 accepted, and this is the content. So this is how you can craft custom responses. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching, see you in the next video, and bye.